Welcome back to the Hive Doctor, your beekeeping mentor. It's my job to take the guesswork out of beekeeping for you. Today we're going to be looking at a newly established apiary that I created using Walkaway splits. So in other words, I let them all raise their own queen. Today, a little over 2 weeks later, it's time to come in and check all these hives to make sure they are viable and have a laying queen. So, to learn what to look for to make sure that your splits are going to be successful, stick around. So I just finished checking this hive. They've got a laying queen and they have plenty of food stores. And the reason for that is because I made these splits during the beginning to middle of my last honey flow. They had enough resources coming in to be able to raise a nice quality queen. So not only do they have a good laying queen, she's got an excellent pattern, but they're also able to make food for themselves so that I don't have to come along and feed them afterwards. So although I've already checked this one, we're going to check the next one together. I haven't even looked in this one yet, so we're going to look in it for the first time right now so I can assess it with you and you can see it kind of live as I go through it. All right, we're going to smoke the hive entrance as usual. Pop the lid just enough to get the smoke in there. Let them know I'm coming. Not dropping the lid because I don't want to squash any bees. And then slowly removing this. Now, my first impression of this one compared to the first and the sound of the buzz that they have tells me either they were not successful in raising a queen or they're a little bit behind. So I'm going to start removing frames near the outside where there's not a lot of bees and work my way towards where there should be brood. I can already tell they didn't make as much food as the first colony, but I do see some here. So we primarily have a frame of capped honey over the top with pollen packed in the middle. These girls look busy. Hopefully they do have a laying queen. They're just a little bit further behind. It's rare that hives will match one another's strength, which is why you should always start beekeeping with at least 2 hives. And this shows me that, in fact, they do have a queen because right here they've got capped honey, rainbowed by open nectar coming in, and all of this is laid full with larvae and eggs. And it's okay that I don't see her. I see proof of her. And on this side, there's eggs in just about every cell except for where the capped honey is at the top of the frame. So I see the quality of the queen. I see evidence of presence of the queen. That is enough for me. So I'm going to put it back together so I don't put the queen at greater risk. For the size of this colony, which is a lower population than the first one, they have enough food and they don't need feeding quite yet. So I'm going to put things back together and I'm satisfied with this colony. All right, so let's go ahead and look at another one together so that you can see a difference, hopefully, in population and buildup. All right, again, this is one that I haven't looked at yet. This looks very similar to the one that we just went over together. In fact, this one actually looks like it has a smaller population. Looking down into the frames, I can tell they have plenty of food because I see capped honey. I also see where they've repaired this frame. Now, you'll notice a lot of this is dark. That's older comb. But for some reason, this area, maybe it had wax moth damage, but it's a lighter in color. That's because the bees have repaired it. So ideally, these bees, if they have repaired this area by creating and drawing out new fresh wax, it means that they feel that they have the resources to do so. A weak colony will not do that. A queenless colony will not do that. So let's see if our prediction is correct. That's kind of a thing in beekeeping. You always want to have an idea of what a hive should be doing at a specific time of the year, and then your inspection will either confirm that or teach you something new. So this is a nice heavy frame of capped honey with pollen in the middle. Capped honey and open nectar on this side. The bees seem calm. They're at work. My first impression is that they've got a queen in here. And one of the things that you want to make sure that you definitely do is give your bees time to make a queen if you're doing a walkaway split. Give them a good 2 solid weeks. Just leave them alone. Because if you come in during the middle of that time, some hives will have made a queen already, and that queen is just laying like crazy, and then others will not, and you'll worry about those when you shouldn't be. They just haven't got on board yet. So this frame right here is completely laid full, and the empty cells that you see where there's not honey, completely laid full of eggs and young larvae. So they've got a laying queen. So far in this apiary, where I've got 14 colonies, the first 3 have queens, and that's a really good sign. Now normally I would just go ahead and shut this up, but I'm going to look at another frame of brood carefully. Now in this one, right in the middle, there's actually capped brood. So that shows you the age of the brood, and it tells me that that's how long the queen has been laying. She's got brood old enough to already be capped. This colony is actually very quiet. That's good because they see me as little disturbance. I'm going to pull one more. It's heavier, mostly fruit food. So they've got 1 frame of brood, but it's a really good frame. And we still have plenty of time left in the year for them to build up a population that's going to live through the winter time. And when it comes to bees, summer bees, they don't live as long. They work themselves to death. Their wings become tattered from all the foraging and the work. But winter bees have more fatty acids in their body, and they're literally designed to live longer. So while summer bees may only last a few weeks, winter bees can live for several months. Now most likely these hives will not be going into winter in a 1.5, that is a deep hive body with a medium honey super on top. They'll be good just to fill out all their frames this year, and they'll go into winter in a single deep hive body, which in my moderate climate area, that's totally fine. They'll come out great. Next spring, I'll open the hive, check it, add a medium honey super for them to grow into, and they'll be in the setup that I want all my hives to be in. Already I can tell from opening this one, I hear a greater buzz. I see a lot more whitening of the comb, more honey filled out further past the brood nest. So I judge this as a stronger hive than the last 2. So now the key is to start inspecting and to confirm what I think or not. Now this is a very outside frame. As you can tell, it was a wax foundation frame, a wired foundation, and these bees are actually working on it. They're not really fixing any of this comb. We're already past our honey flow, so there's not a lot of resources coming in, but they are putting nectar into the cells. It's kind of amazing. So that tells me that's one way of gauging the strength of this hive, if they're working on the outside frame. This is one of my Varroa control frames. It's not built up with drone brood along the bottom, so I'm not going to actually scrape anything today. But you can tell that I've got a lot of capped honey. Most of the other cells are filled with open nectar. This side's pretty much empty, but I feel good about how much stores this colony has. They're not going to starve, and I don't need to feed them. That's a really heavy frame, mostly capped honey and open pollen. Same on this side, open nectar, no pollen. They always face the pollen towards their brood. So I anticipate the next frame possibly having brood on it. Let's see if we're right. It's kind of heavy, so it does. So the structure of this frame, along the top we've got capped honey, a little bit of open nectar, a lot of pollen rainbowed over a patch of open brood, which is larvae and eggs. This side, same deal, just less pollen. So I've got a very good laying queen in this hive. I feel good about it. I'm not going to go into this hive any further because I've already found evidence of the queen, and we're not going to put her at any greater risk. One of the big advantages to creating walkaway splits is not only multiplying your own hives from your own bees and therefore not having to buy more, but you create a break in the brood cycle. And what that means is there's no queen in these when you first split them off. They've got to create one. So eventually there's no eggs, eventually there's no young larvae, and all the brood hatches out. So you're creating a break in the brood cycle. That new queen still has to be developed, nurtured, eventually become an adult and go off and mate and come back, and within a few days she starts laying. But even then it's going to be 3 weeks until the first bees begin to emerge from the brood nest. So that break in the brood cycle is a big advantage because you're creating a natural way to battle against Varroa mite, because Varroa need the brood in order to develop themselves. So when there's no brood to do that within, you're actually fighting Varroa mite by lowering their population because of that natural break in the bee's brood cycle as well. When you introduce a newly mated queen or an older mated queen, when you buy queens from another beekeeper, there's still a break in the brood cycle, but it's not nearly as large, and so you're not going to have that advantage. So as long as you make splits early enough in the year, and I recommend during probably your last honey flow that you can harvest from, you're going to create also a diversity in the genetics of your bees, which in my opinion is equivalent to a very good adaptable bee to your climate. These bees are adapted to my climate. That's what I want in my apiaries. That's what's going to create a strong genetic bee for me, survivors. So if you have any questions about splits, making splits, checking splits, timing, and all of that, drop me a comment in the questions below. Tell your friends about the Hive Doctor and drop me one of these. I'll see you in the next video.